Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3994. Today's episode is a special one because we're sitting down with someone whose journey started right here in our area and went on to make a national impact. Stephen Craig is the founder and CEO of Craig Realty Group, a leader in developing high-end outlet shopping centers across the country. From growing up in Savannah to building millions of square feet of retail space nationwide, his story is one of vision, growth, and staying connected to your roots. We'll talk about business, leadership, and what it means to give back to the communities that shaped you. But first, I want to take a minute and thank our sponsors who make conversations like this possible. Greater Than Financial, Genius Cafe, E.L. Crawford Construction, North Central Missouri College, Scooters Coffee, Pancakes, Pups, and Suds, and our community partner for this episode is Hair by Morgan. Well, welcome, Steve.
Thanks
for being here.
It's great to be here.
I really appreciate it. I shared with you that I've been wanting to talk to you for about 10 years. And really it's because your impact in this area cannot be overstated.
Well, I've had a lot of fun doing it, I'll say that. It's been really interesting. I've learned a lot through the process of it. As you may know, I started off with a pretty significant donation to Missouri Western. I had really, although I'd gone to college, when you're going to college, you don't necessarily know about education and what makes it function. And through 10 years of that exercise, I got a pretty good understanding of it.
Well, the impact just at that school has been significant. So many questions about that. But first, I want to start off by asking you about growing up, because we know what you do, we know what you've done, but we don't know necessarily about your roots. And you grew up here in Savannah.
A little bit south of here, actually. I grew up in Country Club Village, but my family's from Northwest Missouri. My grandparents all grew up in Maryville. They all graduated from the Teachers College at the time. My mom was born in Maryville, so we're from this area.
Yeah, and you graduated from Savannah in 1973?
I did. Barely got through, I'll be honest with you. It was nip and tuck all the way, but they let me go through the processional, so I'm here today to talk about it.
And so my first question for you, which is just kind of a nagging question because I know how much certain teachers meant to me growing up. Did you have one or two that really made an impact on you?
Well, I think I had a lot of them, actually. You know, and I don't want to contend that I was a great student. I don't want you to think that. I really liked business. And I always shined at that at a very early age. And I think a lot of it was due to the fact that the neighborhood that I grew up in, there was a lot of what I would call bourgeoisie business owners, you know, family businesses. And I got to spend time with those parents, you know, through the relationships of their children. And so, oh, what do you do? And what's it like to own a restaurant? Or what's it like to own a truck stop? And they'd say, well, God, you know, you have a lot of questions. Why don't you come and stay with us for a day and see what it's like? We had a neighbor that was a banker. His last name was Tootle, and they had part of American National Bank. It was originally called Tootle Lemon Bank, became American National. And he invited me and said, why don't you come to the bank and work with me for a day? So I got to see a variety of different things going on in the business world and enjoyed it. There was another neighbor that had a bowling alley. Norman Tucker was his name, and they had the Belt Bowl, which still exists today. And spent a lot of time with Norman and his two sons, Scott and Tim. And I enjoyed it so much that I said, you know, I want to get a business. And so one of my other neighbors said, well, you know what would be good for you? Why don't you do a fireworks stand? So at the time I was 12, and I said, well, okay, I can do that. So, and ironically, I drove by the company that I started with called Schneider Fireworks.
Yeah.
A woman named Stacy Blake runs it with her, I think her sister. I knew her father. I knew her grandfather. And I opened my first account with her grandfather in 1968. And I still have the invoices from those purchases. So essentially, I got an early start. And, you know, I'm sure my parents were just mortified by the whole thing. Like, I was either going to blow up the neighborhood or lose a bunch of money, or both. But it's when you get into something, it's almost like swimming. Do you kind of dip your toe in the water, or do you jump in? And I jumped in and did it and liked it a lot. So much so that the next year I started leasing properties in advance. So I leased gas station properties in Andrew County and opened up fireworks stands there, and really made a lot of money. And I used that money to go to college, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so if there's kids right now that are in high school and they happen to look at TikTok and see a little soundbite from you, what would you say to somebody who's considering college, who's considering entrepreneurship in some way early on, they just want to go do it, or somebody that really wants to do a trade? How do you encourage somebody who has that entrepreneurial spirit? Which direction do they take?
Things are a little more difficult today than they were in 1968. Things are a little bit more complicated. Requirements, for example, regulations. I debated it pretty hard, whether or not I would benefit from college. And because I knew that I could do things pretty well by that point. So 5 years later, at 17, I had a half a dozen fireworks stands going at the same time. So I was managing people. I ended up getting a large line of credit. Again, my parents were just like, "Oh my God, you borrowed $10,000."
At 17?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, it was 16, but yes. I'll pay it back. It's going to be fine. And it worked out fine, but it's different now. So, and even back then, so I had the debate whether or not I would go as far. I knew that I could be successful without it, but how far would it take me? And then I realized that when we took our first company public, and it was traded on the New York Stock Exchange, I was the only one of the senior management team that didn't have a master's degree. Everybody had gone to Harvard. And I got a lot of comments back that, "That's pretty amazing. You went to undergrad school at USC and pulled this off. And these guys from Dartmouth and Harvard are your contemporaries." And I knew then and there that I made a wise move, because you're put in situations when you're exposed to people at that level. You have to be able to speak clearly, communicate the direction you're going, and they have to believe you that what you say is something meaningful and it can take place. And I couldn't have done it without it. So the college education was really important in my case because, as you said earlier in your intro, I wanted to have a national presence. Even for that matter, we built in Europe too. We built properties in Italy, and you just couldn't have done that without it. So I would encourage a younger person, if they really are, and there's a young man that's headed to high school here pretty soon, I would encourage him to get that undergraduate degree so he can become a better writer, better communicator, maybe not a better entrepreneurial person, because I don't think education teaches that well. I don't think they have the capability. I think the people that are in education don't understand it and maybe not even appreciate it. But that's okay. They have a purpose, and they can help you do the things that you can't do so well. And that's what I benefited from.
2 questions, and so don't let me forget. One is about the entrepreneurial school at Missouri Western. But first I want to ask you about growing up in a small area in the Midwest, and who you saw and what you saw from a leadership perspective that taught you how to talk to people, how to relate to people, and how to build a successful empire, really.
There was a variety of people that were helpful. And I think even as a young person, communicating with an adult is important. And that sounds simple today, but so many people spend time tappity tap tap on their phones and watching reels and the like and wasting time when they could be out developing themselves and gaining support and respect from other people. So I didn't mess around with things like that. It wasn't around, in the late 60s, 70s. But I think I benefited from being in a very simple lifestyle. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't dangerous. Our parents didn't try to hide us, worry about, they're going to get killed at night. They rang the bell for dinner, we came home. Or it got dark, we came home. We stayed out and played and had fun. So it was a really wholesome childhood in that respect. But I think getting to know these folks that had businesses, and the other piece I would throw into it, and I find it a bit ironic, I worked at the country club. And that's sort of an amalgamation of a lot of people, and in most cases that are a little bit more successful because they can afford to pay for the services that a club offers. And they had a story to tell too. And when you give people an opportunity to tell you that story, they will tell you.
I'm so glad that you're here to tell us your story, because for years I've been wanting to ask you about it, but you being able to have a presence here and tell it today, I think is really impactful for people. And I think it's really neat. I'm going to assume here that the reason why you invest in this area is because of the people and their values and their hard work and maybe what you saw all those years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. That's the positive side of it. The negative side of it is where I currently live most of my time. The society there is eroding. If you don't know that, Los Angeles, and the metropolitan area of Los Angeles, is really suffering. Bad policies, incompetence of people. I mean, we just spent $10 billion on eradicating homelessness, and they built 2 shelter spaces. Not 2 buildings, 2 units. Mm-hmm. How is that possible? Well, corruption, again, incompetence. And you magnify that with bridges that go nowhere, railroads that go nowhere, that you spend billions and billions of dollars on, and you start to see a decaying society. And it became clear to me in the, I'll say, early 2000s that was what was happening, because it wasn't the same place that I visited when I went away to school. I mean, it was amazing in the early 70s to go there and see this place that just was gleaming, and that's not the case today. And you look at the companies that were there. Every aerospace manufacturer in the United States was founded there, and none of them are there now. Chevron, which is one of the biggest oil companies, they're gone now. 145 years in California, they've moved to Texas. And it's, companies like people vote with their feet. They want to go to places where they feel that they're respected, they're wanted, and maybe even to a certain extent cherished. And companies don't feel that way there. So as I saw this progression coming through, I said, gee, do I really want to invest in this? Because I can't make a difference there. And the same was true where I went to college at USC. At the same time, the school was moving a different direction than anything close to what I attended. It was a very woke school. Mm-hmm. There was a dean of the business school there who was really quite good. They demanded that he hire, sort of a rainbow coalition of people. You need one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these, mm-hmm. and it will be all set. He said, well, what I'd really like is to have one of these, one of these. They were the best at what they can teach. Mm-hmm. That wasn't acceptable enough, and he was let go. His name was Jim Ellis. And that was sort of the breaking point with a lot of people. They saw that this was really happening in a major way. And it's, truth be known, it's bankrupting the school. Not just emotionally and psychologically, but financially, the school is having big difficulties. And because no one donates to it anymore. Mm-hmm. And you say, wait, they've got a big endowment. You can't spend the endowment. Most of those dollars are specifically stated to where they'll go. And so they're restricted funds. So you can see it at different levels, in macro and micro levels, what's happening. So I said, well, maybe what I have, I can do something more profound in the Midwest. And so that was the decision.
And we can talk about a host of maybe St. Joe issues, but what I want to ask you about is that question that everyone wonders. Why St. Joe?
Well, I don't think it's just St. Joe. I helped establish the largest high school foundation in Savannah. And you guys have a very amazing foundation that provides a lot of capital. And that's a tribute to 3 or 4 people, Tim Kelly primarily, he started the idea. He came to me and said, "Hey, Steve, I've got this great idea." I said, "Oh my God, I love great ideas. I'm an idea guy."
Yeah.
I go, "Tell me what it is." He goes, "Well, we need a foundation."
Yeah.
I go, "Every person in every building needs one. You need a foundation." And that was supposed to be funny for him. And he said, "Okay, great. So you like the idea?" I said, "Yeah." "Tell me how's this going to work?" He said, "Well, we're going to raise $50,000. I said, "Oh my gosh. And then what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, we're going to give it to the Northwest Missouri Community Foundation, and they're going to invest it, and we're going to get 4%. And we'll use the drippings of that to do different things during the year." I said, "Okay, well, let's both do the math together. 4% times 50,000, that's about $2,000. And there was a little pause, and I said, "Well, we can take everybody to dinner maybe one night."
Yeah.
He goes, "So you don't like the idea?" I said, "No, I love the idea.
Yeah.
I don't like the execution of it." And he said, when he was open enough, he wasn't offended, because sometimes I could offend someone. Just ask Kelly Crawford.
Yeah.
He's a genius, actually. Tim was willing to listen, and he was willing to take some advice. I said, "Let's raise some meaningful amount of money that we can actually do something with, and then I'll match it. But with one proviso. I get to direct where it's invested. Because if we give it to the fund managers, everybody just siphons off most of the money. But if we invest it properly, it will grow and grow and grow. And today, and I think is a testament to that, that foundation is worth over $2 million. If we would have done $50,000, it would be worth $50,000 today. Because you don't gain enough. In 10 years, we would have taken in $20,000, and we would have probably spent the $20,000, and we'd still have the principal of $50,000.
It's incredible, really, that you can bring your business sense home, which is really what, small communities in rural areas need. What I'm grateful for is your little pivot from St. Joe to our little corner of the world right here on the Savannah Square.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people see what you're doing in St. Joe. They read the newspapers or they watch TV and they see what you've done on this big scale, but maybe people don't realize how much you've given back and what your desire is for, the north, south, east, and west side of the Savannah Square. So tell me a little bit about that, because we are a baby town, but you're from this area.
Well, you're a baby town, but you're a town that's doing some great things. I kind of felt you were saying something about St. Joseph and some of the problems that they may be having with the school system there, and you're correct. I mean, they have leadership problems. They don't have school problems. They have poor leaders that make poor decisions. Conversely, here in Savannah, you guys are investing. You're putting money in and improving the schools. The same thing's happening in South Buchanan County. Look at Cosby and those communities. Why are they thriving all around one area, and the people that are in the center are failing so badly? Is it the water? No, I don't think so. Is it the individuals that are there? I don't think so. But is it the people that are leading the charge? They may be missing the mark and spending too much time on their own personal interests. Or maybe they just aren't really fully equipped to make the decisions that they need to make. But make no mistake about it. And you can look back to when I was in high school. People go, "Oh, you go to Savannah? I'm so sorry." Today, people say, "Oh my God, you went to Savannah." And oh, geez. And I'll take it one step further. I have an employee. She came to me, it's been 6 weeks ago, and she knew that I had a house in Andrew County. And she was currently living at roughly, we'll call it 30th and Masseny. So kind of near Central High School.
Yeah.
She goes, I would give anything to rent that house. And I said, why? Why is that so important to you? She goes, well, that house is in Andrew County, and that Andrew County has that school system. That's where I want my kids to go.
That's incredible.
She now lives in Andrew County.
Wow.
Her kids now go to John Glenn, and one will be coming to Savannah next year. So people, as I said, they vote with their feet. They want the best for their families. They know good when they see it. They know bad when they see it, and they make decisions accordingly.
I mean, that's the reason why we raise our kids here. You know, we were a little bit south of town and moved to the district because of the special education program.
Here in Savannah.
Here in Savannah.
Oh, great.
And that was 10 years ago, and have been nothing but happy. And as you can see, Leadership Savannah spurred just an idea like this, where we thought there's a need. Why wouldn't I invest back in my community? And I think there's people that live in St. Joe that just complain about the leadership. They struggle to stay. A lot of them want to just move.
Right.
Just pick up, shake the dust from your feet and move.
Yep.
And so my question is, you're someone who continues to pour into the community, and there's plenty of criticism, right? And not only for you, but for the leadership. And so let's talk about some of the things that, you know, maybe people look at and think, why is he still doing this? You know, the Rosecrans issue. There was issues there, but then you continue to invest in beautiful projects like a hotel and convention center. Maybe the mall is a question. People drive by, they go in, they go out, they're frustrated, they're concerned, or they just say, it's St. Joe. I had somebody contact me last week and say, I'm making a list of all of the businesses that have closed. There's the long list. So one would argue, why not shake the dust from your feet? What is it about this community that continues to bring you back? Is it leaders like Kelly and Kathy Crawford? Is it leaders like Annette Weeks here? And, you know, what brings you to do the things that you do? What's your motivation?
Well, I think it's people here that care, that they, and pardon the expression, they give a shit. It's important to them, and they want to improve things. Also, I can make an impact here. Once again, I could throw $1 billion at something in Los Angeles, and you'd come back and go, "Oh my God, what happened?" You know, it's all destroyed. Because there is a lot of destruction that takes place there.
You can see the hope almost in the soil, it sounds like.
Well, you know that if you do something, it's meaningful. And you mentioned Rosecrans. It's one of the best airports in terms of runways in the United States. You can land against the wind almost in any direction, which is, as a pilot, is important. They have a new 8,600 foot long runway that supports general aviation, which is private planes, and as well as the 39th Airlift. And what they didn't have is a place for people to actually land there and have the experience of getting off a plane, going to wherever they're going to. And they also didn't have the hangar space. So I started kind of asking around, doing my little research with my little feeble mind, and what I realized is there was a lot of demand for space, but no one would put up any money for it. The city wouldn't do it. The operator of the airport, who was at the time Gary Patterson, great person, he wasn't in a position to do it. So I said, well, I'll do it. And so they had an RFP, and we competed for it. I think, as I'm told, we were the only one that actually completed the RFP, and it was extensive. It was like your high school term paper that you'd spend 3 months on. And I realized that when I got it, oh my God, this is going to take days. So what I did is I worked 2 hours a night for about 8 weeks. So I'd work would be over 5. I'd work from 5 to 7 to take a section of it, then knock out another section, finally got to the finish line. There was a little bit of shenanigans, or what you might call politics, involved. There was a person or two that worked at the city that wanted a particular person to have it. But once again, that person, I don't believe, had the capability of doing it. And so now we're in a position to have something really amazing. In the meantime, while I was doing that application, because this RFP went out in 2024, I purchased a former airline. So I had an opportunity to buy Pan Am from the Mellon family. If you're familiar with Bank New York Mellon, Carnegie Mellon University, they started. And we got selected. I don't exactly know why, but there were several people that wanted to buy it, including 2 or 3 foreign individuals. But the Mellons wanted to stay in the United States. And so we were able to purchase it. And that became sort of the kingpin of my idea, that this would be the first Pan American Flight Services FBO in the United States. And I'm now working on 2 others that would be in the Western U.S. But more importantly, the Pan Am brand would be on Rosecrans at that FBO. And people would remember it and say, oh my God, that's part of Pan Am. I know Pan Am. If you're not familiar, because you're younger, Pan Am was the number 2 brand in the world in 1970, 1980, and 1990. They had an incident in Lockerbie, Scotland in the late 80s where Muammar Gaddafi blew up a 747, and that sent the airline into a tailspin. And by the way, the same thing happened to TWA when Flight 800 blew up and went down. All the management focused on the catastrophe and not on running the airline, and ultimately they filed bankruptcy. Mr. Mellon bought it. He attempted running a new airline that was more regional, based in sort of New Hampshire in that area. He spent a lot of money on it. He spent $200 million, and finally said, you know what, I've enjoyed it. I'm going to move on. We looked at it differently. We said, what can you do with a brand that's this amazing? And from that initial brand, we have set up 6 different companies. So if you can go online and book a ticket on Pan Am Travel. And I'm going to predict in 2 or 3 years it'll be the biggest travel agency in California. It's growing that quickly. We set up, as I said, the FBO. The first one opened on January 1st. We have a Journeys program where people can take curated trips to specific airlines, or areas rather, with a Pan Am plane. In July, we'll open the first Pan Am experience, which is kind of hard to explain, but you go to a building as if you're going to the airport, but you're not flying anywhere, but it's a recreation of you taking a trip and the experience of flying in the 60s and 70s. So there's a ticket counter, there's a receiving area, then there's the boarding area, and then you board the plane, and all the people are dressed in period Pan Am uniforms and serving the same type of food that they served on those original flights. So that's going to be opening. And then I got an idea that we should open a Pan Am hotel. So the first Pan Am hotel will open probably March next year. It's under construction in Los Angeles, and it's at one of our properties there. And that should be kind of interesting as well. So again, one little idea, and that came about, I was having lunch, and there's a club that's near my office that's it's like the Benton Club, but it's next door to our office. So we call it our commissary.
Yeah.
So everybody that's in the building comes over and has lunch over there. And I ran into these people from Pan Am, and they said, oh, just so you know, we're selling the company. And I go, oh, good for you. I said, have you found a buyer? No, but would you be interested? I said, sure, let's take a look at it. And one of my friends who was there with it, his responsibility was to actually talk to them, get the financials, figure out if this thing was viable. And I didn't hear from him. It had been 2 or 3 months, and I finally ran into him again at lunch. I said, hey, his name is Craig, first name, not last name. I said, Craig, what's going on with Pan Am? He said, well, that deal, that's never going to work. I go, really? Really? And what brought you to that conclusion? He said, well, I looked at the financials, and the financials are terrible. I go, well, I expect that they would be. I mean, look what they were doing. They were trying to run a regional airline and they didn't know what they were doing. Same thing would happen to us. He goes, well, I really didn't think you were that serious. And this was my exact quote to him. I said, Craig, if I was having a heart attack, would that be serious enough? He goes, got it. Called him back. We had a second meeting and we struck a deal. And the Mellons were really great to work with. Easy transaction. Got right through it. And then we closed in early 2024.
Fascinating, because in the last few weeks, the airlines are in the news, and wow, people would be running away from a deal like that. And that's what's interesting about you, is when people are running away from brick and mortar stores, you haven't.
No.
How many outlet malls do you own right now?
I think we own 11 as of today. We're having our best year ever by far, but last year was our best year ever by far.
Oh.
And I think it's because we focus on experiential issues. I know you like to drift back to my childhood, so I'm going to go back a little moment. I had a mom that didn't believe in babysitters. She wasn't like a latchkey mom, leave the kids here, I'm going to go off and play tennis.
Right.
No, she said, hey, I had the kids, I'm raising them. So, and unfortunately for me, I had 3 sisters. There were only 4 kids, so I was the only boy. And that meant wherever they went, I went. And 3 tends to outvote 1. So Saturdays was all about buying this outfit for this event, these shoes for this event.
Man, you got trained early.
I did. And believe you me, my mom drove it into me. She knew exactly where to go. And she knew why to go there and the reasonings for that. So for example, she knew that 11:30 or 12, we'd start to get hungry. Someone would need to use the restroom, but she wouldn't just use any restroom.
No.
They had to be clean restrooms. They had to be well kept, well stocked. And she knew where to go. And so we would end up there. And I used that same logic. So we have the finest restrooms in the world at our properties. No one ever outdoes us, because as soon as we finished the last one, we figured out how to make it that much better and have continued to improve. And so what happens is people, it's funny about this in life, people repeat things that they enjoy and they discontinue things that they don't like. It's that simple. And I get letters often, people say, I only shop at your mall because of this. So I go, okay, so we did something right. I like that.
Keystone, Colorado.
Yep.
Great restroom this summer.
Yep. We just rebuilt all the restrooms in Castle Rock and made them individual restrooms. And, today people are more private. It used to be, if you think about in the 30s and 40s, you'd be in this big room and everyone would be using the restroom. I'm surprised they even had dividers in those days. Maybe they didn't. But today we build them all that they're individual rooms. You go in there, it's like, okay, it's got a great spot. I think I'll stay here for a while. And it goes over really well.
Let's talk about a mama who doesn't want to have to drive to Kansas City to shop.
And can I kind of maybe cut to the chase a little bit?
Please. I think people listening would be like, let's cut to the chase.
Yeah, let's cut to the chase. The town of St. Joseph has shrunk in size.
Yeah.
There are less people here today than there were 10 years ago. Yet there's more retail here today than there was 10 years ago. And it doesn't take someone with a PhD in mathematics to figure out that might be a problem. Long before I got here, the shops at North Belt were approached and approved by the county with some big incentives in what are effectively, they're not star bonds, but they were like that. They were tax dollars that were made available to the individuals developing it as an incentive to build it. Well, they built a lot of space. And to make East Hills happy, they said, okay, well, we'll give East Hills some money to remodel. But it was too late. The world had already changed. Amazon had already taken off. And when we shopped as children, my family, they shopped the whole day. There wasn't a travel league to go to. There was, you shopped and you went to every store. That's not how people shop today. They bullet shop. They pick out one spot. Okay, I know where I'm buying the shoes. Got it. Headed there. A mall like East Hills, unfortunately, is built from that old model. Shops at North Belt, perfectly situated for bullet shopping.
Which makes sense that you would invest in a property that now is full, right? The little strip mall, right by the North Shops. It's not that you're giving up on St. Joe. It's just you're investing in a different model. Am I right?
Well, I'm taking a different direction.
Yeah.
There's 765,000 square feet of space there. So it's probably one of the biggest buildings, maybe outside of Altech, that's in town. So, for example, we're building what's called a Tier 3 convention center in the Sears space.
Not even a mile. Well, I guess I was going to ask you about the convention center and hotel. That's not even a mile away from the mall. But do tell me about this space.
Well, this space is in the mall.
Yeah.
So when Sears went bankrupt, their model failed too. They'd been around for 100 years or so. Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck. People bought everything from Sears. I don't know if you know that you could buy a house from Sears.
Really?
Yeah, you could.
I remember the catalog well.
In 1900, you could order a house, and it would come in a kit and would be delivered to the rail depot near where you were.
Wow.
I only know that because I sit on a foundation board where the person who we honor lived in one. And I've been through the house. They go, oh, yeah, this is a Sears house. Oh, my God.
Wow.
It looks like many you see across the country. That worked great in 1900. But today, goods and services are delivered differently. And Amazon changed that forever. And it makes time more precious. We're more compressed. We thought our new iPhones would, oh, my God, think of all the extra time we're going to have that we can just done, okay. Actually, no, people are more intense than they were, before the iPhone. But I just began looking for ways to do something different with it. And actually, ironically, I'm going to go back to my fireworks roots that I discussed earlier.
Are you opening a fireworks stand?
Exactly.
In East Hills Mall?
No.
Is everybody getting this?
What I'm going to do is I had a conversation with Stacy Blake.
Yeah.
Stacy, people don't realize it. Her family has one of the longest standing ATF licenses in the United States. I think it's like number 3 or 4.
She's going to have to be my next guest.
Yes.
Come on, Stacy.
So I said, Stace, what's going on? Oh, I don't know. I'm the president of the National Fireworks Association. I go, no kidding.
Wow.
Good for you. That's big time. High five. And I said, well, what does that mean? She goes, well, what it means is I'd really like to have our next convention in St. Joseph. I go, well, great. Well, how about the Civic Arena? Would that be good? And she goes, I don't know. So I called the director of the convention. I called Mary Robertson, who runs the arena. End of the day, they don't even have a third of the space that you could have it in. They need to host 1,200 people with hundreds of booths. They would bring 250 10 by 10 booths.
Right.
Well, 250 times 10 by 10, that's 25,000 square feet. The convention center is only 18,000 feet.
Do the math.
Do the math. And then that doesn't leave any place for people to walk. So I said, well, I see the dilemma. Why don't we talk about this? Because the city has never had a convention center. And what if we created a space that was big enough that not only you could come, but other people around the Midwest could come to? And we now have designed what's called the Midcontinent Expo Center. And our logo is the star in the middle of the United States. We're right in the middle. We can provide a very inexpensive way for a company to host one of their events, or an institution like the National Fireworks Association. So,
Steve, is this breaking news?
This is breaking news. So
thank you.
We're working on it with her. We're working on it. I've talked to 2 other groups that have expressed interest in it. Many of the larger convention centers, I'm going to interrupt myself, they're rated by tiers. So there's tier 1, there's tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. Las Vegas is a tier 5, 1 million square feet, very large, accommodates everybody. And this would be a tier 3, so it would be kind of right in the middle. It would have 150,000 square feet, which is large, accommodate a lot of regional stuff and even national stuff. But let's look at the potential impact. If the National Fireworks Association does elect to come here, makes the decision, they would bring likely 1,250 people from around the world. Those people in 1 week would spend more than all of the Chiefs camps combined.
Incredible.
And
we know the Chiefs camp is like the biggest thing that our Visitors and Convention Bureau really focuses on in our chambers.
Yep.
And we put all of our time and energy and money into it.
Yep.
And it's amazing. But dare I say, it may not last forever.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to end in 2030. So
When that contract is up. Yeah. Amazing. And here's the cool thing about this idea. Stacy Blake is from Andrew County.
Yep.
She has kiddos that go to school with my kids. Kind of gives me chills, Stacy Blake.
Well, it was her idea. So
But this is about relationship. Had
It
you
is.
not had a relationship with Stacy and were willing to listen to a female entrepreneur, we wouldn't be having this.
no, and we wouldn't have a
That-
convention center either.
That's crazy to me.
A little bit
I
of
think
serendipity.
it really is, but it's about leadership. It's about listening to people. It's about relationships. And it's, dare I say, kind of inspiring to somebody like me
Yeah.
from Andrew County.
I think it's going to be meaningful even for Andrew County. And one of the things that makes us attractive to them, as we all know, everyone in Missouri loves fireworks. And according to Stacy, apparently Missouri consumes about 30% of all the fireworks made.
I believe it.
So when you think about it, these manufacturers, and they're coming from Taipei, they're coming from Shanghai, they're coming from Macau, they want to sell their products. And they also want to demonstrate them. So they need to come to an area that's would be encouraged to have people shoot them off. So it would be 6 days of fireworks.
And legal.
And legal. So,
Okay, so now it makes sense. You're building a hotel,
yes.
and there's a smaller convention space or
I would call it a conference center.
conference center.
So it's more of a place to have, you could have a wedding reception, a large wedding reception. You
We
could have
need that.
a large chamber function, an installation of a new chamber president. The Contractors Association of Northwest Missouri could have their annual dinner and meeting there. Right now, we don't really have a lot of space. Even the Noise Home, when they have their take a seat, they're hard pressed to find a place that can accommodate them, of 600 or 700, 800 people at a table. This will do that. So, my hats are off to the city. I gave them the idea, and they said, we love it. And so we're doing an incentive that we'll pay for through the incentive. In other words, a portion of our room dollars will go towards that directly, and hopefully in time we'll pay it off. But it's a great investment.
And you absolutely choose a local construction company to make that happen. You always seem to choose a solid partner who does great work in this area and who just happens to be from Andrew County.
Exactly. He was a couple years behind me, so he was an underclassman. And I know Kathy Crawford, and we're talking about Kelly Crawford. She is concerned every day if she made the right decision with Kelly. But I think it's turned out okay. But not only do we use Crawford Construction, all the subcontractors, they're St. Joe contractors and Northwest Missouri contractors. So the money gets to filter its way back through, and that ends up maybe at a school function, maybe at a restaurant, and it helps everybody.
So if you were wondering, is there a method to his madness? There really is. There's a method to your madness.
Well, I hope so.
I have to ask you about two other things happening. Obviously, we talked about Missouri Western in the beginning, the entrepreneurship experience there, Northwest, and the opportunity to maybe improve a scoreboard over there. And then thirdly, and we can't forget this one, the goats.
The goats,
Huge.
absolutely. Love that team.
Tell me about these projects.
Well, the goats didn't have an owner. They were in a league, and the league owned the team. People didn't really realize that. They had an owner at one point that was in Kansas City, and the guy essentially walked away and said, "Oh, league, you take care." So it'd be like the National Football League running the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
That's a big scale. This is small scale. So I was approached by someone and said, hey, would you be interested in this? We could move them to St. Joseph from Kansas City. I go, I kind of like that. I kind of like a little dagger into KC.
Kind of like football.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. I've got a great partner. Ted, who runs the team, he's very spirited, very entrepreneurial, works really hard, understands and appreciates the dollar, so he doesn't waste money. And I think we'll either break even or even make a little bit of money, which means we can put more money back into the team this year. So we'll have it the whole year. Last year we only had 6 of the 8 games. The league still owned it for the first 2 games. So we'll have a full season under our ownership. We'll continue to play at the Civic Arena. We're trying to layer on a few little side benefits to make it that much more fun for people. But Ted's doing a great job, and it's a great product. I've been to the games, I'm like, holy cow, these things are crazy. It's like a combination of football, roller derby, and a bunch of other things.
And lacrosse.
Yeah.
Maybe.
They're going at it.
Yeah. Field hockey.
Yeah. So I've enjoyed that.
Garage beer.
Garage beer, that crazy thing happened, just out of the blue. The Kelseys have garage beer, and they wanted, they knew of the goats when they were at KC. They said, well, we like to invest, but there wasn't an owner.
Right.
Again, it was the league. And so once the ownership thing got squared away, they stepped in and bought 5% of the team.
Incredible.
Yep.
Let's pivot to Missouri Western. A lot of people said, dying school. It's going to go out of business. It's done for. But you continue to invest. You have an endowment there and invested in the scoreboard. Best, greatest, biggest in NCAA Division II history.
Yep.
And the business school. This is not a product going away.
Well, I hope that the leadership of the school and the university can keep it going. I mean, it's one thing to inherit something. It's another thing to keep it going. And that works all the way down to families as well. But they have to deliver a product that people want. They have to market and encourage people to get there. And they have to control costs so that they can be in line with other things. But I've enjoyed working with them. The scoreboard was a fun project. I actually personally designed it. I spent 3 years on it because I wanted it to be fantastic, not just good. And I think other schools sort of said, oh my God, how are we going to top that one? Because people don't realize that sports is a war. It really is. It's a continual battle to keep trying to outdo the next guy and to do better and better. We finally got the go-ahead to build it. There was some controversy. Truth be known, the faculty didn't want another dollar invested in sports. They'd already seen the indoor sports complex built, and then they all of a sudden, this amazing scoreboard, there's renderings of it popping up, and they're like, wait a minute. We're the faculty. We're the people that teach. We need a little love too.
Yeah.
And once they got a little bit of love, we got the go-ahead to do it, and I think people were pretty stunned. I know they saw what it would look like, but when they saw it in real life, they go, oh my God.
And if you build it, they will come.
Yep. I was just as happy, I built the Snyder Pavilion because once I saw the scoreboard from the hillside, I said, this thing needs a bookend, and I think it would work really well. And that was a combination of having been to Camden Yards in Baltimore and seeing what they did with their baseball stadium. And I said, we don't need seats. We just need a level area so people can hang. And it'll close in the stadium and make it feel right. So it worked out. And then naming it after a great legend. People don't realize how great of coach that he was. from my people that I know, and I've been fortunate to know some pretty good coaches. I was very good friends with John Robinson, our coach at USC, former coach of the Rams. Terry Donahue, who was the coach at UCLA for 20 years, winningest coach in what was called the Pac-12 history. They all think that Bill Snyder did the best coaching job ever. Because we all knew from the 70s, they didn't win a football game. So it's one thing to take over the University of Miami Hurricanes. Okay, they're really good. Now we're going to make them a little bit better. Okay, they're great. But take over programs that's never won a game. Try that one on for size, and everyone's demoralized, and no one wants to go there. No one wants to compete for you. He turned that program around, so hats off to him for that. He grew up in St. Joe. His home is still where he grew up, is still there. It's, if you know where I think it's the Joint City Police County Station is, they're just north of the courthouse. So go one block further north, and that's where he and his mother lived.
Amazing people hail from this area. And dare I say, Steve, like, you're one of them. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm actually working on my estate right now because I turned 70, so I'm getting old.
You gonna retire?
I hope not. I hope I'm still motivated enough to keep working because I enjoy working and doing things. But I mean, we have to be realistic with ourselves. The history books are full of people that lived and died, and we're all going to face that at some point. So I want to make sure that I've planned well and not left a mess for somebody else to deal with, because it would be a large mess, rest assured. So, we'll probably look at in the next few years, we're going to be selling a lot of the real estate side, the shopping center side of it. I have an aerospace company that I bought in 2018 that's just, as you can imagine, killing it. And not necessarily because there's more fighting going on. We just are doing things better than other people. And we're delivering our products on time. We're delivering the quality that we promised. We're delivering the quantity that was promised. And you may say, oh my God, that's so fundamental. But I could tell you some stories of people that do the wrong things, that get haywire and make bad decisions. There's a company that makes a missile system that's very important to our country. And they approached us for us to buy them. And then I started learning the story of what they were doing with these products. So they were under-delivering, yet they were billing as if they delivered the whole order. So it'd be like you buying 10 bushels of apples and you only got 2. You go, wait a minute, something wrong here. I think I got shorted a little bit. And that catches up with you. But if you do it consistently the right way, it works in your favor. And so we're growing at about a 20 to 25% clip per year. And that's been really nice to see. And I've got several of my friends, I said, okay, I recommend if you want to make an investment, this would be a good place to invest. Even Coach Reed, who coaches the Chiefs, I said, Andy, this is where you want to invest. And I think they're all very pleased that they made that decision. So I like having things that work out and work better than people expect. And
I mean, sometimes things don't work out. When there's a failure, do you accept that failure and move on? Do you try to rework things? How does that work for you? Do you ever count it as a failure?
Oh, I think failures is absolutely important. I mean, I think the best one is from someone who's somewhat local, Warren Buffett. He started a company called Berkshire Hathaway. And if you know the history of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren was a pretty young guy in the early 60s, and he wanted to buy this textile company in the Northeast. And they didn't want him to buy it. So there was a big fight, and they were a public company, and he was buying stock, and they were buying stock, and they were trying to hold on, and finally he won. And then 2 years later, the company collapsed. And rather than change the name of the company, he chose to leave the name Berkshire Hathaway to remember what failure looked like. So that was his worst investment.
Someone said to me last week, write down all your failures so you can remember.
Yep.
And then write down 3, 4, 5 years later what came of that failure. And I thought, ooh, that's good. All right, I got to pin you down.
Yep.
Legacy. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I did some great things. I looked at some opportunities and left the place a lot better off than I found it.
That's a pretty darn good legacy.
Hope so. But you did talk about the entrepreneurship program. That's probably easily one of the best things I've ever done. And hopefully at some point you can interview some of these kids and I call them kids, they're now in their 30s, and I guess one just turned 40. It's hard to believe, but in 2009, a young man was headed to law school. I convinced him to do the program, and he ended up winning the competition and now operates 8 or 10 businesses in the Denver area.
I was reading about him this week, and so many more. Someone put on their list of closures in St. Joe, Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
Well, it closed because it wasn't doing well. The store was originally a partnership between Rocky Mountain Chocolate and myself and the university. 2 of the 3 partners left the scene of the crime. Rocky Mountain said, we really don't want to operate stores. Okay, fine. So I reimbursed them 100% of what they'd invested in that store. The university they weren't using the store as it was intended to be, which was a training center store.
Right.
Instead, they were sending kids to go to other places, to Utah, Colorado, Texas, and other places, to be with existing, former students that had stores. So I made the decision as part of my sort of estate planning. I didn't need the tax losses, and the store continued to lose money, so we just closed it. So we're debating right now whether to close Aspen Leaf. It was also a training center store for the yogurt side of the business. It does a little bit better, but again, you can't operate businesses that lose money because, again, once I'm gone, someone's going to go, cut, and why are we in this? So that's what happened there. But hopefully we can find somebody that would like to have that business.
One word that describes why you do what you do.
Joy. Yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy every day. I mean, I get a huge kick out of being involved in businesses, translating that into a local or a national community, helping other people. I meet with people at least once a week. There's someone that comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to talk about this. I want to know how you did it, how you did that. Because they want to understand what's the journey that looks like. So think of it like the 1880s when people were leaving St. Joseph. 19 railroads used to come into this market, and they would get on wagon trains and go to the west. People wanted to know from the people who were experienced that did it, what's it like to go for 3 weeks on a wagon trail through Indian Territory?
Yeah, what are we about to experience?
Yeah, and when I was in college, you make a reservation. I was a practical joker, so you have to understand that. So you make a reservation, and they say, okay, how many in the party? 4. Okay, name please. Donner. Okay, Donner, party 4. Okay, so you're there, and then you're waiting in the lobby. They go, okay, Donner, party of 4, and everyone laughs because they know it's not the real name. No. But the Donner Party actually started here in Northwest Missouri. The famous party where they ended up in the Sierra Nevadas and they ultimately ate each other.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That is kind of a funny joke.
It is a funny joke, but it probably wasn't as funny for them back in 1880.
Probably not. Steve, it has been such a joy to talk to you today. And since this is my podcast, I can swoon over you if I want to. Relationships, leadership, integrity, those things matter today more than ever. And so thank you.
You bet.
Thanks for being with us today.
I appreciate you having the interest in me and the time as well.
Absolutely. To everyone listening, thank you for being a part of the 3994 community, where we continue to talk to people who are making a difference. We thank our sponsors for coming on board and letting us interview people like Stephen Craig. We appreciate you, and if you're interested in sponsoring, please reach out to us. Please subscribe, like, comment, share our podcast. Until next time.